Okay, let's take a look at some tools. And before you start panicking, looking at this cornucopia of tools here, you're not going to need all of this. I'm just going to go through what I have in my arsenal and pretty much tell you what you need as essentials. And what you can get as, or what you will acquire as some of these things I've acquired over time. So starting with the essentials, the most important thing you're going to need is the soldering iron, and I said this is the Miniware TS 100. Little soldering iron, got a little cable that goes into that. Fire it up, it's beautiful, very handy for the field as well. As I say, you can buy a desktop one, up to you, but this works fine. I have two tips for this. I don't know whether you can see, but I've got like a very fine tip and a slightly wider tip there, and you can just change these out, and that's it's just nicely like that on this little wire wool thing. And I will say I'll have links to all of these things that you can buy from Amazon or wherever in the shopping list. So that's your soldering iron. You'll definitely need a little pair of wire cutters or whatever this is called. Yeah, micro cutter I think it's called. Nice pair of tweezers like this. Not tweezers. What do we call this? Needle nose pliers. Sorry, comes in handy. You'll need a file set. Yeah, it's a good thing to have, and a lot of these things come with quads. These came with quads that I've bought in any case, but it's quite a handy thing to have. You'll definitely need a little wire cutter, whatever you call these. Hobby knife. That's what I'm looking for. I actually don't use wire strippers. If I'm cutting wires, I'll just actually cut the wires and then strip the wire, strip the plastic off the silicone off the end with one of these hobby knives. Ceramic tweezers are very, very handy. Very good to have the ceramic ones and not the metal ones for obvious reasons. Non-conductive. I've just got two here, but definitely only really need the nice sharp pair. This thing here is a nut screwer or whatever you call it. It's got both sides here. So yeah, reversible thing. That's made by Spedix, but again, any nut bolt thing will do. You're definitely going to need some solder wire. As I say, 60-40 tin to lead with some flux in it. All right. I generally buy these little things, but you can buy rolls of them. Need that for your soldering. These are very, very great. The no clean flux pen, because generally much easier to clean. You can buy some of this this paste here, the flux paste, but I actually hate working with this stuff. It's really mucky. It's more effective, but I don't think it's really necessary. Pair of scissors, pair of pliers, which you'll probably have in your kit anyway. I just have a little Leatherman for my field kit as well. You'll need some of this kind of heat shrink to do this kind of thing here, where these are the little so on the back of this little God mode here I've got here, so I've got a receiver in there and the wires come out, and you'll be able to get some zip ties here, put some zip ties on, and then put some heat shrink onto that, and yeah, with a little lighter or heat gun or whatever, you can heat it up, and then you've got your thingies. There are lots of different ways to do this. There are TPU mounts that you can mount antenna wires, but I find this quite nice, easy way to do it. And the one that you'll need most, I've got a variety here, is this 4mm thick one. That's the most, I mean, I don't think I've ever used this stuff really, but that's the one you'll need. You'll need some Loctite. I bought the wrong one here. That's a slightly less strong one. I think you need the 243 this is for to screw your bolts into the motors. All right. To keep it nice and tight. Going around here, good idea to have a card reader if you haven't got one. Yeah, for flashing firmware onto your radio and onto the SD card on your radio, things like that. You can do it directly to your radio, but I find that easier. I've got a field if I'm taking some 1080p footage. I can pop it onto a disc. You'll definitely need, not essential of course, definitely need a battery checker. All right, so obviously you're going to want to be able to check your batteries. We'll go through all of this in the battery section. All right, so we can see there we've got a fully charged battery, 4.2 volts. So you need that. I've got another one there. Blue tack, really handy for when you're soldering stuff on. So if you've got a flight controller or whatever it is, you can just stick it to that. Yeah, and really handy thing to have. I also have this clamp here, which I sometimes use. Yeah, that kind of thing. But you don't need that, or a pair of helping hands is a useful thing to have. Screwdrivers, little set of screwdrivers is a good thing to have. Scissors, I think we mentioned. This thing here is called a smoke stopper. So when you've wired up your components, which we'll do shortly, instead of just plugging a battery into a new quad build, and you know, if you've got a short, you've got two little solder joints that are, you know, overlapping, can cause a short, and that's going to end in tears and in smoke. So it's a really good thing to have a smoke stopper, which you can just plug into like that. This has that acts as a resistor, and if there's a problem, okay, shouldn't really do this with the props on, but so that'll fire up. Nothing's lit up on here, so if anything lights up on the bulb, you know you've got a problem. All right, that's a smoke stop. I'll have a link to that as well. In this kit here, again, a lot of this sort of stuff you'll acquire along the way, but this device here inside here is another kind of electronic smoke stopper. I think from RDQ Quads or something. So in here I've got a little selection of different things, a little micro SD to USB thing, which is handy, some standoffs, spare capacitors, which we'll talk about, some spare wire, some spare heat shrink, you know, and on this side I've got some washers and motor nuts here, little spare camera here, USB adapters, some bolts and so on. So good to have, you know, a few spares in your kit in the field. Essential to have a set of these. Generally speaking, I use only the 1.5, the 2, and the 2.5. I don't think I've ever used the 3 for for anything in FPV, but good to buy them in a set. As I said, you'll need 2 different types of heat shrink, one for your receivers like this, and you can get heat shrink like this, which you can use to put onto your receiver. I actually, for many years, when I was using Free Sky receivers, I just used Captain tape, and again, I'll put that in the link as well. Useful thing to have. SpeedyB adapter, wireless adapter, which is basically an alternative to Betaflight. So if you don't have a computer in the field, you can get into Betaflight with one of these. So just remember SpeedyB. They're quite useful to have. Types of glue, good to have some super glue always. This stuff here is great. Your ES6000, it's yeah, for putting antennas onto, securing antennas onto receivers and things like that. And you know, I had to, for example, I had to put this this board, this VTX, onto a little bit of TPU here, and glued it into that so that it's nice and secure. Lots of things that's very useful for. Zip ties are essential, as I said. Electrical tape, different types of electrical tape. You'll need double-sided 3M tape to mount receivers onto things. This 3M, so that's a double-sided tape there, different type there. Okay, so it's sticky on that side, and then you peel that off there, and it's sticky on that side. You will gradually acquire different capacitors. We'll talk about capacitors when we actually wire our quad together. Yeah, and that's really it. All the other sort of stuff I've got to myself, not essential, but little thing of nuts and spacers and things like that. I've got a whole thing of bolts that I've acquired of different sizes. I've got a thing of washers. Again, you don't need all this to begin with. It's just something that I'm showing you that, you know, you might want to build a selection of eventually. I've got some standoffs in here. Don't know whether you can see that. These are the standoffs that you'll use. So that's these bits here. Okay, they're called standoffs. And I've got some whole range of XT60 pigtails. Okay, so obviously you've got your XT60 there, and that's going to wire up to your electronic speed controller. Sorry, out of range there. Again, that's your XT60 pigtail there. So you can see I've got a little capacitor on there, wired up to the battery, positive and negative. Yeah, useful to have some of these. And that is, I think, about it. As I say, this is just tools. Obviously, this is not for the you know, the quad parts, or we will look at charging batteries and all that sort of stuff. But just the basic tools that you need. This is it. What else have I got here? I've got some dental floss, as I said, to put these little grommets through. I think I mentioned that in one of my lessons. Quite a useful thing to have. Don't forget you're going to need some battery straps. Oftentimes, you know, you get everything built up and then forget that, oh, I've got my battery, and you don't have a battery strap. So just remember your battery straps. One more thing I forgot to mention, actually, which is a really useful thing to have, is a little USB desktop fan that you can fire up if you're working on the bench with your props off, of course, and you plug in a battery. And you'll remember that I said that VTXs can heat up very quickly. So this is a good way to keep your VTX cool if you're working on the bench with your quad plugged in. And one other thing I forgot to mention was this little goot wick, it's called, braided flex. If you want to, for example, remove some solder off a pad, apply heat with your soldering iron, and that'll take it off really nicely. So that's desoldering wick or goot wick.